This is R2D Tech, and today we're reviewing the Google Pixel 4 and 4 XL. So this year has been the biggest change in terms of design for Google's Pixel lineup. They've changed the 2 texture back to just 1 texture. They've also got a square camera bump, which makes the Pixel look a little bit like the iPhones, which I don't really mind, but some people might. The Pixel, like last year, comes in 3 different colors. It comes in clearly white, oh so orange, and just black. They've also still included the colored power buttons, which I think is a really nice touch. It's orange on the oh so orange and clearly white, and then white on the just black. They've also now got a black rim all around the outside on all of the Pixels, which I think is a nice touch, but some people might not like that. Looking at the front of the phone, to be honest, I think the design is a little bit underwhelming. You've still got a massive forehead and a small chin. The massive forehead is to house a lot of sensors, which we'll talk about later, but I think they could have made it a little bit smaller, and to be honest, the chin should be completely gone in 2019. They've also removed the fingerprint sensor from the back, replacing it with a face unlock feature, which is really fast and really competitive with Apple's lineup.
In terms of cameras this year, they had 2 main cameras on the back, even though you might think they were 3 because of the new square bump. But instead of implementing an ultra-wide camera like the iPhone 11 Pro, for example, they opted to use the second lens as a telephoto, which in my opinion was a huge mistake. The actual main camera lens is a wide angle lens, so you can get quite a lot in the shot, but not ultra wide, and the telephoto is up to 2 times optical zoom. On the subject of zoom, they actually use a software implementation, so even if you zoom past the 2x zoom, so you're zooming digitally, the actual other lens will combine its data with this telephoto lens in order to correct the image, and it will get rid of some of the noise in the photo. And you'll actually see this, that you'll take the photo and it will seem quite noisy in the background, and then 1 second later, after it's done its correction, you'll see that all that noise is gone, which is pretty cool. That's obviously one of the main things with Google's software implementation when it comes to cameras, because the actual units, the actual lenses, the actual sensors that they use are similar to other companies, but it's the software implementation which makes their photos really special. For the selfie camera now, they've only got 1 lens, and it's a wide lens, not ultra wide again. So unlike some of the other phones this year, you won't be able to take ultra wide with all of your friends, but it is wide enough that you should be able to get quite a lot in the shots. Unfortunately, they didn't, as I said, implement any secondary lenses. You will still be able to do portrait mode on both the selfie and main camera, so that's good. When it comes to video, the selfie camera can only record 1080p 30fps, which is a bit disappointing considering the iPhone 11 Pro can actually do 4K 60fps on the selfie camera, which is pretty insane. But then on the main camera, it can record 4K up to 30fps, not 60, which again is a bit disappointing considering most other companies will allow you to do 4K 60fps on the main camera. Now, we know that Google don't focus on video too much, they focus on photos and using software to correct the photos and make them pretty amazing actually. And their night sight has been pretty great as well. I would say though that the iPhone probably does a better job at not blowing out the image too much on night sight, so you might want to consider that when choosing between the Pixel or the iPhone. The last thing to talk about is a new smart feature called astrophotography, which they've implemented on this new Pixel phone, and it's actually really clever. It will take a photo over a period of about 4 minutes if you leave your phone in a stable place and point it up towards the stars. And by doing this, you'll actually be able to see the stars quite clearly in the photo, whereas other phones like the iPhone, which I've just praised before in the video section, won't be able to do that well in this because they only take the photo over about 20 seconds, so you actually won't be able to see the stars that well on an iPhone photo, whereas with this new mode it will be pretty clear.
In terms of the operating system, the Pixels come with Android 10 pre-installed, and I think Google have done a really good job with gesture navigation this year. They've definitely taken some inspiration from Apple with swiping up from the bottom to go home and swiping up and holding to access tabs. Another feature that comes with Android 10 is an improved Google Lens, which now has a lot more features. For example, if you take a picture of a product, it will now allow you to view where you can buy it in the app directly, which is a really nice feature. Another feature that comes to the Pixel 4s exclusively is the new Google Assistant. And what Google have done is they've shrunk the size of their machine learning model so that it can actually fit on the internal storage of the Pixel, which is really cool. And it means that the Google Assistant is really fast now in opening apps and just doing everyday tasks. You still have the squeeze functionality, which personally I never really used on the Google Pixel 2, but it's still there. Another exclusive feature is motion sense. Now Google have actually added a radar chip right in the forehead of the Pixel, and it can sense hand movements so that you can skip songs, and they've actually used it to make the face unlock faster. So when you're reaching for the phone, it will wake up the phone and get ready to look for any faces, which makes face unlock really fast, a lot faster than Apple's solution. At the moment, the motion sense feature is very hit or miss, so it might not sense that you want to skip a song, but hopefully that will improve in the future. I don't see myself using a lot of the motion sense features, but one of the features that I might use quite often is if you have an alarm and you reach across the table towards your phone, it will actually quiet the alarm down and then you can swipe across to dismiss it, which is a really nice feature, especially in the morning if you're really tired.
When it comes to the actual specs, the internals, the boring part, it's actually more important than you might think, because the display is now 90 Hz, and even though that might not mean anything to some people, it's actually pretty amazing. So when you're gaming, you'll notice that it's a bit smoother. You'll see when you're swiping through the actual operating system, it actually seems a lot faster and fluid than what you might see on a standard iPhone or Samsung phone, which are typically 60 Hz refresh rate. It's basically impossible to show this on camera unless you have a good slow motion camera and you have the phones side by side. But if you just take my word for it or go into a store and try it for yourself, you'll see what I mean straight away. One downside though with the displays on the Pixels, even though they are OLED, they're actually not that bright. So in the sun or when you're outside, you'll notice that at max brightness, and it will be at max brightness most of the time, you won't be able to see that well, especially if there's sun glare everywhere. Another thing to mention about that 90 Hz display is apparently Google actually switch it back to 60 Hz quite often, just automatically to save battery life. And some YouTubers have been doing tests on this and found that the majority of the time the software will actually be on 60 Hz. So you won't have the full benefit of the 90 Hz display. But if you head over to the developer settings, you can actually force it to stay on 90 Hz constantly. You'll probably see a huge hit on battery life, which is already not that good on this phone. In terms of size, the display is 5.7 inches on the Pixel 4, which is pretty small, but then again, I'm actually starting to enjoy these small form factors quite a lot on smartphones. Now, the Pixel 4 XL has a 6.3 inch display, which is actually quite large. It's not the largest we've seen, but I think it's a pretty decent size. In terms of battery life, you're going to see quite a huge hit, as I mentioned before. That's because the Pixel 4 only has a 2800 milliamp hour battery, which is pretty ridiculous in 2019 if you compare it to the 4000 milliamp hour batteries of some Samsung phones, which is a lot higher. And then if you also take into consideration that you'll be using a 90 Hz display and it's OLED as well, the battery life is going to be pretty poor. And most YouTubers say that it won't even last towards a full day, whereas other phones in 2019 will last almost 2 full days. The XL, on the other hand, has a 3700 milliamp hour battery, and you might think that this is going to be significantly better in terms of battery life, but you would be wrong, because the actual battery life is affected quite significantly by having that much larger display. So in general, battery is not a strong point for these new phones. On the ports front, you've got USB-C on both these phones. No headphone jack again, but you can get a dongle and attach your wired earphones if you want. Or you could just go with the trend and get Bluetooth earphones like everyone nowadays. So even though they've actually removed one of the front speakers, they've still got dual speakers on the bottom and a speaker on the top where the earpiece is. So you do actually have stereo speakers, which is pretty good. And we know that the Pixels actually do quite well when it comes to sound quality, quite loud and a good stereo effect as well. In terms of storage, there's actually no expandable storage, but that's not something we've come to expect from Google. You can either get a 64GB storage model or 128GB. And this year there's only one option for RAM, which is 6GB of RAM. That's pretty significant, that's pretty good, and it's definitely going to be enough. Especially since the software Android Q is the stock version and it's designed to work great on this phone. You won't see a lot of glitches, and with the new Snapdragon 855 which is in this phone, it should be pretty slick, pretty fast, and it should last quite a long time without slowing down.
So my overall impression of the Pixel 4 lineup this year is that it was a little bit underwhelming. I mean, the Pixel 4 starts at £649 and the 4 XL at £829. And in my opinion, for that amount of money, by going with another company, you can get a lot more. Especially if you consider the iPhone 11, which offers a lot of features that the Pixel 4 has, and it wins in a lot of areas such as battery life. Now, if you still want a really strong Android experience and one of the best cameras you can get on a smartphone, the Pixel 4 might still be for you. That's it from us this week. If you liked the video, please press the thumbs up button. If you loved it, please consider subscribing.